بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. In today's lesson, we're going to take a small break from Kitab al-Tawheed, or the usual lessons that we've been going through, and perhaps just for the occasion of Ramadan, just go through some other topics in relation to Eemaan and Taqwaa and related issues. So for today's lesson, inshallah, I want to just go through some of the verses in the Qur'an, and the commentary of Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah, the noble Shaykh Abdul-Rahman ibn Nasir Sa'di rahimahullah, who's one of the teachers of Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah. And this is taken from one of his books, which is in fact a compilation of the Shaykh's commentary on a number of different issues, such as Eemaan and Ibadah and Ad-Du'a and Ad-Da'wah and At-Taqwaa. And the compiler has basically just brought the Shaykh's commentary on a variety of verses and a hadith on these subjects and put them into one volume. So for today's lesson, I just want to go through some verses that relate to At-Taqwaa and just benefit from the Shaykh's commentary and the Shaykh's advice and the Shaykh's commentary on some of these selected verses. So the first of these verses is the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nisa, the 4th surah, verse 131, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَقَدْ وَصَّيْنَا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ أَنِ اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَإِنْ تَكْفُرُوا فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَنِيًّا حَمِيدًا. Rough translation of which is that to Allah belongs that which is in the heavens and the earth, and we have indeed advised or given as advice to those who were given the book before you, and likewise given you advice that you should fear Allah, or you should have taqwa of Allah, and that if you disbelieve, then indeed to Allah belongs that which is in the heavens and that which is in the earth, and Allah is indeed free of need, ghani, and worthy of all praise. So the Shaykh rahimahullah, Shaykh Nasir Sa'di, he says regarding this ayah, so he says that Allah the Most High has informed us here about His general dominion, meaning His dominion and ownership, His great ownership and vast ownership, meaning of the creation, and which necessitates that He control and regulate it with all of the various types of control and tadbir, meaning control and regulation, and that Allah would likewise administrate and regulate it both in terms of qadr and both in terms of shar, meaning as far as creation itself is concerned, and likewise as far as the sharia is concerned in the laws that He has revealed. So as far as the sharia is concerned, then Allah has indeed advised the very first people and the later people, meaning the people of the book, those people who received the book previously, and likewise in recent times, meaning the Qur'an, that He advised them all with At-Taqwaa, with the Taqwaa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which comprises and which includes command and prohibition. Taqwaa comprises command and prohibition, and the legislation of the laws, and likewise it comprises rewarding anyone who fulfilled that, meaning who fulfilled and stood by this advice with reward, and punishing the one who neglected it and wasted it, right? Punishing the one with a mighty painful punishment. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in this verse, وَإِن تَكْفُرُوا. So after saying first of all that we have indeed advised those who were given the book before you, and yourselves likewise, that if you fear Allah, that you should have taqwa of Allah. And that Allah said, وَإِن تَكْفُرُوا, that if you disbelieve, meaning that you abandon the taqwa of Allah and you associate partners with Allah in that which He sent down authority, then indeed you will not be able to harm anyone except yourselves by way of that. And you will not be able to harm Allah in any form at all. And you will not diminish anything from His mulk, from whatever He owns and from His dominion. Because Allah has servants and Allah has slaves or servants which are better than you and greater than you and more numerous than you, who obey Him and who submit to His command. So as the ayah continues, وَإِن تَكْفُرُوا, the Shaykh explains, this is why Allah, after the first part of the verse, when He said that Allah has advised those who came before you, and you likewise that you should have taqwa, that he followed this up in the second part of the verse when He said, وَإِن تَكْفُرُوا فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَنِيًّا حَمِيدًا. That if you disbelieve, then to Allah belongs that which is in the heavens and the earth, and indeed He is free of any need and worthy of all praise. So the Shaykh comments and says that to Allah belongs the most perfect type of generosity and al-ihsan, al-shamil, the complete benevolence which emanates from the vast treasures of His mercy, which can never ever be diminished by spending, and which can never ever be reduced by spending, even if that is during the night and during the day. And if all of the people of the heavens and the earth, those inhabitants of the heavens and those inhabitants of the earth, if they were to all gather together, from the first of them to the last of them, and each and every single one of them asked, then they would still, they would still, and if they were to ask in such a manner that their wishes and desires were fulfilled, then that would never ever diminish anything from Allah's dominion. And this is because the Shaykh explains that He is Jawad, that He's the one who's generous, and He is praiseworthy, and when He gives, His giving is speech and His punishment is speech. What this means is that His command, that whenever Allah wishes something, then all He has to do is to say kun, and it will be. That when He wishes something, then all His command is merely that He says kun, and it will be. And from the perfect and completeness of His being free of want, meaning that His ghina, meaning that He is free of any need, is that Allah has been described with the most perfect of descriptions or characteristics. And that if Allah had any deficiency from any angle, then He would have been in need of perfection. He would have been in need of being perfect. But rather we see, on the contrary, that Allah has every attribute of perfection, and from these attributes is the one that is being discussed here, or the two names that are mentioned in this verse, Al-Ghani and Al-Hamid. So as for Al-Ghani, the Shaykh says that from the completeness and perfection of His being free of any need is that He has not taken for Himself neither a wife, neither a spouse, nor a son. This is an indication of His perfect absence of need. And neither has He taken for Himself, or neither is there to be found any partner in His dominion, nor any dhahir, meaning like an aider, or like an aid or an assistant or a helper, and nor anyone who aids Him upon any of that, meaning in controlling and regulating and maintaining the affairs of His creation. And likewise, from the perfection of Him, of His not being in need of anything, is the fact that the world, both the lower part of the world and the higher part of the world, meaning that which is in the heavens and that which is upon the earth and below, both of those two things, that they are in complete need of Him in all of their situations, in all of their affairs, in every circumstance. And the fact that they ask from Him, and they ask from Him for all of their needs, both the small needs and the larger, loftier needs. And this is a sign to show that, or to indicate the fact that Allah is completely free of need and completely free of want. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when His creation asks Him for all of these needs, both the small and the large needs, and in all of their various types, then Allah is able to fulfill them. He fulfills them, and He for the people. And so He then, when He fulfills them, He makes those people free of need, and He suffices them, and then He bestows upon them His favors out of His compassion, and likewise He guides them. Right? So all of this is a sign and indication of the perfection and completeness of in Allah's name, Al-Ghani, and whatever it follows on from that, from the attributes. That Allah is perfect in that. And all of this is a manifestation of Allah being free of need, rather on the other hand, the creation being in complete need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Shaykh continues and says, as for Al-Hamid, the praiseworthy, then that is one of the names of Allah, the lofty, noble names of Allah, which indicates that Allah is deserving and worthy of every type of praise, and every love, and every praise and ikram, like ennoble, again honoring. And this is because of what Allah has been described with of the attributes of praise. Right? All of the attributes that Allah has been described with, the attributes of praise. And these are from the attributes which are from the attributes of Jamal and Al-Jalal, like beauty and loftiness and so on and so forth. And also Allah is worthy of all His praises because of the favors He's bestowed upon His creation of these various favors and blessings and so on and so forth. So therefore He's praised in either situation, in every situation, either because of the praiseworthy names and attributes which He possesses, or because of the favors, and because of the favors He bestows upon His creation. And the Shaykh says, how excellent is the combination between these two names. Now if we look at the meanings of these two names, then we find how excellent is the combining between the mention of these two names, Al-Ghani and Al-Hamid, together in one place. The Shaykh explains, because Allah is Ghaniyun Mahmud, Allah is free of any need and praiseworthy and praised. And just like He has perfection, He's completely imperfect in Him not being in need of anything, and likewise He's perfect and complete in His being praised. And so each of these things on its own is a praise and is perfection, meaning that Allah is Ghani and Allah is Hamid. On its own, these two things necessitate praise and perfection. And likewise, when they are both combined together, then they necessitate another type of perfection. And so then the Shaykh then says that after mentioning of these two names, then Allah, He then repeated the fact that He comprehends His creation, or He surrounds His creation from every single angle, and everything that is in the heavens and the earth, and that He is a wakil, meaning that He is the one who is entrusted upon every single thing. And that's the end of that verse. And then the next verse is the verse again, Surah An-Nisa, and it's in fact the first verse of the surah, the very first verse of the surah. And this is the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya ayyuhan nasu ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida wa khalaqa minha zawjaha wa batha minhuma rijalan kathiran wa nisaa wattaqu Allah alladhi tasaaluna bihi wal arham inna Allah kana alaykum raqiba. Meaning of which is, O mankind, have taqwa of your Lord, who created you from a single soul and created from it its partner, and from them both spread forth many men and women. And have taqwa of Allah, on account of whom you demand your mutual rights, and likewise the wombs, or the ties of kinship. And indeed Allah is ever watchful over you. So the Shaykh, he comments and he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He began this surah by commanding with at-taqwa. He began this surah by commanding with having taqwa of him and encouraging his worship, and likewise encouraging or commanding the tying of the ties of kinship, and emphasizing that. And he explained that the reason behind all of this, the thing that brings all this together, that the reason why Allah has commanded all of this is that He is your Lord who created you. Right? He is your Lord who created you. So what the Shaykh is explaining, that Allah first of all established fear, have taqwa of your Lord who created you. And that Allah has mentioned here that your Lord who created you, that itself is the reason or the sabab that necessitates these other things that are followed. Meaning that you have taqwa of Allah, that you worship Him, that you tie the ties of kinship, and so on and so forth. And so Allah is the one, by way of this statement, Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum, your Lord who created you, meaning He's the one who provided for you, He nurtured you by way of His favors and blessings that He bestowed upon you, and from amongst them which is that He created you from a single soul and created from that its partner. Right, so this is from the greatest of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so He created for this soul its partner, so that it may live and dwell with its partner and attain happiness and attain blessings and so on and so forth. So this is from the greatest favors. And likewise from the things, so all of these things, they necessitate that you worship your Lord. They necessitate that you worship your Lord. And similarly, from the things that necessitate and invite a person to have taqwa of Allah is the fact that you mutually ask one another by way of Allah. What this means is, what the Shaykh explains what this means, the part in the verse where Allah says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ. Right? Have taqwa of Allah on account of whom you mutually ask from each other. What this means is, for example, a person might have a need from someone else, so he will say to him, أسألك بالله أن تفعل الأمر الفلاني, that you, I ask you by Allah that you do such and such thing. And a person asks someone else by invoking the name of Allah, because he knows that when he invokes the name of Allah, when he asks by way of Allah, he will know that because that person has in his heart the veneration and the glorification and respect of Allah, that this person won't reject him, right? It won't refuse him whatever his need was. So likewise, what the meaning of this verse is, as Shaykh explains, is that just like between yourselves you glorify Allah in this manner, meaning that if you are asked in Allah's name, that you won't refuse, and that's because you glorify Him, then likewise glorify Him by worshipping Him and having taqwa of Him. Right? So just like this mutual demands that you make, which are fulfilled merely by Allah's name being invoked, and this being a sign of the veneration that you have of Allah in your worldly dealings, then likewise you should have taqwa of Allah and you should venerate Him in His worship and having taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And likewise Allah informed in this verse that He is Raqib, meaning ever watchful, one who oversees His servants in all situations, whether they are moving, whether they are still, whether they are moving, whether they are alone in secret, whether they are open, and in all of the different situations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is muraqiban, He is watchful over them in whatever situation that they might be. And this means, the fact that we acknowledge this in turn necessitates that we have muraqabah of Allah. Muraqabah meaning that we are mindful of Allah in our actions, because we know that Allah is watching us and ever watchful over us in all of our situations. That therefore in turn we have muraqabah, meaning that we in turn are watchful of Allah. That in our actions we are aware and watchful of what we do, because we are aware of that Allah is all hearing and all seeing. And likewise it necessitates that we have washiddatul haya, meaning this extreme modesty and like shame in front of Allah, this haya, this humility and modesty in front of Him, and that we adhere to having taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And likewise, so these are the benefits from the different things which are mentioned in the verse. And likewise, the Shaykh continues, rahimahullah, and he says that when Allah informs us in this verse that Allah created us from a single soul and that He sent them forth in all of the different regions of the earth, alongside the fact that they all emanate from a single base or a single foundation, this implies or this shows that they should be compassionate to each other and gentle and kind to each other. And he linked all of that with the command to have taqwa of Allah and the command to be righteous and to be good with one's relatives, with the arham, meaning with the relations of the womb. And he prohibited from cutting them off, and in order to emphasize this right which exists. And just like this verse necessitates that we abide by the rights of Allah, then in a similar manner it also obligates us to abide by and fulfill the rights of the creation, especially the ones who are closest to us, meaning the ties of the womb or the ties of the kinship, and that we fulfill their rights, and that this itself is from the right of Allah which He commanded. So these are some of the benefits, all of the benefits that this verse contains. And in essence, what the Shaykh explained is that because Allah mentioned Ya ayyuhan nasu ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum, right, that Allah created us, then that itself necessitates all of the other, that we in turn worship Allah, that we tie the ties of kinship, that we have taqwa of Allah, that we are watchful of Allah, and all of the other things that were mentioned in this verse, right? The fact that Allah created us, that is the sabab, that is the reason which invites to all of these other actions that were mentioned in this verse. And that's the end of that discussion. And then the third verse is again from Surah An-Nisa, the fourth surah, verse number 77. And in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِمَنِ اتَّقَى وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. Short verse, Allah says, and the hereafter is best for the one who has taqwa, and you shall not be wronged even a fatila. You will not be wronged. Fatil refers to if you have a date. If you look at a date stone, and the date stone has a line or a streak in one side, like a cut in one side, and sometimes it has like a small thread that you can pull out from there. That is fatil. That is a fatil. So the hereafter is for the one who has taqwa, and you shall not be wronged by a fatil. Meaning that you will not be wronged even to the degree of a fatil. This small, insignificant little thing. You will not be wronged even to that amount. And the Shaykh, rahimahullah, he commented in explaining this verse, وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِمَنِ اتَّقَى, meaning the one who had taqwa, the one who feared shirk, the one who kept away from shirk and who feared shirk, kept away from shirk and all of the prohibited things. This is the one for whom the hereafter is best and better. وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا, meaning that you're striving for the hereafter, for the home of the hereafter, then you will find it completely fulfilled and rewarded for completely. It will not be diminished in anything. So meaning that even something as insignificant and small as a fatil, which is like that small, very thin piece of thread that you can pull off the side of a date stone in the ridge, then even to that amount, that will not be neglected. You will be rewarded in full, you will be recompensed, and nothing will be diminished from you in any form or fashion whatsoever. And this is for the one who had taqwa, meaning who feared Allah, kept away from shirk, and kept away from all of the prohibited things, all the muharramat, the prohibited things. And then the next verse is in Surah Al-Baqarah, And this is the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى وَاتَّقُونِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Surah Al-Baqarah, the second surah, verse 197. And so the Shaykh comments upon this verse, and he says, the meaning of the verse is, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, that take for yourself a provision. Make for yourself a provision. For verily, the best of provisions is at-taqwa, is having taqwa of Allah. And fear me, O people of intelligence. So having a provision, this is like when a person goes out on a journey and he makes a provision, meaning he takes with him that which will allow him to complete the journey. So provision, this is what it means by making a provision. So as for, the Shaykh comments and says, as for the true provision, whose benefit will continue in this life and in the hereafter, then this is the provision of taqwa. Meaning that taqwa is the best provision that you can make, which is something that will benefit you in this life and will continue to benefit you in the hereafter. So this taqwa is a provision in this life and likewise in the hereafter, and it is something that will make you reach the most perfect and complete of, if you like, the na'im, the bliss, and the reward and the ladha and the beautiful taste and the bliss and all of these things that will remain forever. This taqwa, this provision that you make, is something that will lead to that. And anyone who abandons this provision, anyone who doesn't make this provision, make this provision for himself that he will carry through in the hereafter, then such a person will then be subjected to every evil, and he will be prevented from reaching that abode of the pious people, which in the hereafter. So this shows that taqwa has been praised here, because Allah says, فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى, then that is a praise of at-taqwa, in the sense that this taqwa is something which if a person accumulates and makes as a provision in this life, it will then carry him on into the next life, into all of the rewards and the blessings and so on and so forth which await such a person. And then after describing at-taqwa in this manner, in that it is the best form of provision, he then ordered with at-taqwa. He then commanded straight after with taqwa. So he said, وَاتَّقُونِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, meaning, fear me, O people of intelligence, meaning that, O people of intellects, those people who have sound intellects. Fear your Lord, whose taqwa is the greatest thing by which He has commanded the intellects. Right? The taqwa of Allah is the greatest thing which He has commanded the intellects, and to abandon it is an evidence for ignorance and the corruption of one's opinion. Right? So meaning, a person abandoning taqwa, this shows that he lacks intelligence. He has jahl, and as the Shaykh says, fasadul ra'i, like a corrupt opinion, corrupt viewpoint. And as for the person who adheres taqwa, then the Shaykh says that taqwa is the greatest thing which has been commanded upon the intellects. And then, so that's the end of that verse. And the next verse is the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Layl, one of the surahs at the end of the Qur'an. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. Meaning of which is that as for the one who gave and had taqwa and who believed in al-husna, then surely we shall ease for him the way or the path. And the Shaykh comments upon this, and he says that in these verses Allah has favored those who act, and Allah described their actions in this passage. So Allah said, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى, as for the one who gave. And this means that this person gave in relation to the actions of worship that relate to one's wealth. For example, he gave the zakat, the various forms of zakat. He spent from his wealth in the various forms of expiation that a person has to make, or in the various acts of charity, or just giving in the different forms and types of good. Right? So this person spends from wealth. And likewise, the ibadat which are in relation to the body. Right? So a person, he performs the salah, performs the prayer and the fasting and other than them. And so both of these things are contained when Allah says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى, as for the one who gave, meaning he spends from his wealth and he spends from his body, meaning in the actions which require the body, like the prayer and fasting and so on and so forth. So, and likewise, those other actions which are made up of prayer and things like Hajj and Umrah and so on and so forth, which consist of different aspects of worship. So, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى, that's the meaning. وَاتَّقَى, and meaning that he kept away from whatever he was prohibited from the muharramat, from the prohibited things, and the ma'asi, from the acts of disobedience, in all of their various forms and types. وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى, and who believed in al-husna, meaning he believed in la ilaha illallah. He believed in la ilaha illallah and whatever follows on from it, from the aqaid, from the beliefs, from the beliefs in the religion, and whatever follows on from that, from the from the other affairs and from the rewards and so on and so forth. فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى, meaning that we shall make easy for him his affair. We will make it easy upon him, and we will make every goodness come to him and easy upon him, and we will make it easy upon him to abandon every evil. Why? Because he acted upon the causes and the ways and means of ease, of taysir, of this ease being brought upon him. So because he acted upon these affairs, meaning him giving from his wealth and his body, and him fearing Allah, meaning keeping away from all of these haram things, that in itself is from the asbab, from the ways and means that lead to taysir, meaning this easing of affairs, Allah easing for this person everything, and making easy for him to abandon all the evil and everything else. And that's the end of that discussion of that verse. And then the next verse is the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ, and have taqwa of Allah in order that you may prosper. This is Surah Al-Baqarah, the second surah, verse 189. And the Shaykh comments upon this verse, and he says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, have taqwa of Allah. This is the birr. This is the birr, or the righteousness which Allah has commanded. And this means that a person constantly have taqwa of him by constantly fulfilling his commands and keeping away from his prohibitions. And this in itself, by fulfilling these two things, this is the cause and the reason of al-falah, of being successful, which obviously is being successful in attaining one's goal and delivering oneself, saving oneself from that which one fears, that which is fearful. So any person who didn't have taqwa of Allah, then he won't have any path to success. He won't have any path to success. But as for the one who has taqwa of Allah, then he will have success and he will be delivered from the marhub, meaning that thing which he fears, which is the punishment in the hereafter. And finally, we'll just finish with one more verse, and this is the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ali Imran. Allah says, لا يغرنك تقلب الذين كفروا في البلاد متاع قليل ثم مأواهم جهنم وبئس المهاد لكن الذين اتقوا ربهم لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها نزلا من عند الله وما عند الله خير للأبرار. Rough meaning of which is that do not the movement and the toing and froing of those who disbelieve in the land, do not let that deceive you. It is just a small enjoyment. That's all it is, a small enjoyment. And then their abode will be Jahannam. And what an evil destination. But as for those who had taqwa of their Lord, then for them will be gardens beneath which rivers flow, and they will abide therein as a reward from Allah. And what is with Allah is better for those who are righteous. So the Shaykh comments upon this verse and he says, that the intent behind this verse, what is intended behind this verse, is to divert one's attention away from whatever is obtained by those who disbelieve, whatever they acquire and whatever they obtain. For example, the pleasures of the world, and they're indulging in them and seeking pleasure from them, and they're just general moving and toing and froing upon the earth, in the land, with different types of trade, and the businesses and trade and things that they earn, and the various pleasures that they acquire, and the various forms of honor and position and domination that they have at certain times and certain situations. All of this, the Shaykh says, all of this is mata'un qalil. It's just a temporary, small, little, pleasure. That's all it is. It doesn't have any thubut, it doesn't have anything firm, and not any baqa. It won't remain and last. Rather, it's just something by which they just have a temporary, small amount of pleasure, but for which they will have a long and lengthy punishment. And this is the best situation that there can be for a kafir. And as for the muttaqun, as for those who have taqwa of their Lord, the believers, those who believe in Him, then along whatever they acquire in this life of, again, honor and blessings and bliss and so on and so forth, then they will have something additional, which is lahum jannatun tajri min tahtiha al-anhar khalidina fiha, that they will have gardens beneath which rivers flow, abiding therein forever. So the Shaykh says that if we, let's say for argument's sake, if we accept that the believers in the life of this world, that they have every type of harm, every type of difficulty and hardship and so on and so forth, then all of this, if we compare it to the everlasting bliss and the safety of the safe living that they will have, and the happiness that they will have, and the great happiness and joy and all of that they will have, if you compare that hardship and difficulty to the everlasting bliss, you will find, what is it? It's nothing. It's just, all it is just a small little thing which is in the form of a trial, and really it amounts to very little when you compare it to the everlasting bliss. And this is why Allah said, for this reason Allah said at the end of this verse, وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِلْأَبْرَارِ, that what is with Allah is better for the righteous. And the abrar are those whose hearts are righteous, and their hearts are full of righteousness, and therefore their statements and their actions likewise are righteous. So then Allah, who is Al-Bar and Ar-Rahim, He will reward them with a great reward, and He will give them with a great giving, and and He will give them with, or they will end up with having a great success, or a constant success. And that's the end of this verse, and that's the end, inshallah, of this short lesson on some of the benefits from the verses in relation to at-taqwa. And maybe in the next lesson, inshallah, maybe we'll continue looking at some of the benefits that the Shaykh has provided by way of commentary upon these verses in the Qur'an.